Build a strong foundation. Nehemiah and the building of the walls of Jerusalem. Book of Nehemiah. The story of Nehemiah begins after the captivity. What is captivity? In the beginning, the people of Israel were one kingdom, ruled by one king. The kingdom was later split into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom, which is known as Kingdom of Israel, with Samaria as its capital, and its southern kingdom, which is known as Kingdom of Judah, with Jerusalem as its capital. The people of Israel left God and started to sin and worship idols, so God delivered them as captives to another nations. Captivities is when another king from a foreign country comes with his army and takes over another country. He takes all the goods in the country and takes the men and youth to his country to work for him. This is what happened to the people of Israel. First, the northern kingdom was taken into captivity by the Assyrians. Then afterwards, the southern kingdom was taken into captivity by the Babylonians. After the period of Babylonian captivity, the king of Persia came and overtook the kingdom of Babylon. The people of Israel returned to Jerusalem after 70 years of captivity. As God promised in the prophecies, they returned in 3 different groups over many years. The first group, led by Zerubbabel, after 70 years of captivity. The second group, led by Ezra, after about 80 years from the return of the first group. The third group, led by Nehemiah, after about 12 years from the return of the second group. Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, was from the people of Israel, born during the captivity. His name means God comforts. He was the king's cup-bearer, which was a great job, since whoever did had to be trusted by the king because he offered him his personal drink. One day, a man named Hananiah came to Nehemiah with some men from Judah, then told him that the people who were left from captivity were in great distress. He also told him that the walls of Jerusalem were broken down and the gates were burned. Nehemiah was very sad. He fasted and prayed and asked God help that God may give him favor in the king's eyes. Afterwards, Nehemiah went to the king and offered him his drink as usual. Nehemiah's face was sad and was not acceptable with that servants appeared in front of the king with the said countenance. However, Nehemiah found favor in the king's eyes, and the king asked him the reason of his sadness. Nehemiah told him that it was because of the condition of the cities and of his fathers. When the king learned the reason of Nehemiah's sadness, he said to him, "What do you request?" Before he answered, Nehemiah prayed to God to help him with his request. Nehemiah said to the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it." The king asked, "How long will the journey be, and when will he return?" Nehemiah told him the time, and the king agreed to send him and gave him everything that he asked for. The king also sent him with captains of the army and horsemen to help him. Nehemiah began to implement his plan. So Nehemiah did the following. He gave the king's letters to the governors to allow him to pass. They let him pass through the cities and go to Jerusalem, and finally he arrived at Jerusalem. 3 days later, he took with him some men and toured the city to examine all the burnt gates and broken down wall. After he saw all the ruin, he said to the priests and governors, "Come, let us build the walls of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be reproached." Nehemiah 2:17. People were encouraged by the words of Nehemiah. Once Nehemiah began to implement his plan, obstacles and oppositions arose. A group of leaders from neighboring countries tried to stop the building of the wall. They claimed that Nehemiah and the people were rebelling against the king of Persia. By building the wall, they said this to instill fear within the people and stopped them from building. Nehemiah began to encourage the people and said to them, "The God of heaven himself will prosper us. Therefore, his servants will arise and build." Nehemiah 2:20. He asked everyone to build the destroyed part of the wall in the front of their house. The enemy started to make fun of the work. Nehemiah prayed and trusted God will be with them. The people worked together and the entire wall was joined together up to half of its height. The enemies became very angry and prepared for war to stop the building. While the people worked, were few that felt that they were unable to complete the work. Nehemiah prayed and trusted God that they will help them. He encouraged them to set guards amongst them to protect them against their enemies. Every one of the builders had his sword ready by his side, even as he was working. At last, the wall was finished in 52 days.